The top stories tonight and Y News. From today until end of August, residents in Metro Manila must observe an 8 p.m. to 5 p.m. curfew. This comes after Metro Manila mayors agreed to impose a unified curfew.
Barriers are no longer required for riders and backriders living in the same house when on board their motorcycle. Some provincial bus operators call on the government to allow them to operate partially, while passengers are reminded to wear a face mask and a face shield while on board a public utility vehicle.
The Department of Science and Technology estimates FDA registration of a COVID-19 vaccine in mid-2021.
The Department of Agriculture implements a temporary ban on the importation of poultry products from Australia.
South Korea records almost 300 new coronavirus cases today, and museums, nightclubs, and karaoke bars in capital city Seoul are ordered to close. And let's marvel at the wonderful creations. Citizen scientists discover nearly 100 of our new cosmic neighbors.
Good evening, Philippines and the world. Today is Wednesday, August 19, 2020. I am Harleen Delgado.
Join us in the next hour as we deliver today's top stories around the country. I'm Angelo Castro III.
And I am Mariela Toza here in Perth, Australia, bringing you what's grabbing the headlines in other parts of the globe.
We are also seen in 1,935 satellite monitoring centers nationwide and via live streaming worldwide through the UNTV News and Rescue social media accounts and our website, untvweb.com. I am William Theo.
First in the news, from today until end of August, residents in Metro Manila must observe an 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. curfew. Our Malacanang correspondent, Rosalie Coz, explains why.
The Interagency Task Force Against COVID-19 has considered the recommendations from the Metro Manila mayors on a stricter general community quarantine or GCQ. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque today announced the agreement among the NCR local chief executives to implement a unified curfew from 8 in the evening until 5 in the morning the next day.
Dito po sa Metro Manila, uniform curfew from 8 p.m. to 5 p.m. Meron po na hindi po masasakop nitong bagong curfew hours mamayang gabi. Ito po ang Manila, Muntinlupa at ang Pasig. Dahil kinakailangan po nilang amendahan yung kanilang ordinansa na nagsasabi ang curfew are 10 p.m. Pero nag-commit naman po ang mga mayor at alkade ng ating mga syudad ng Maynila, Muntinlupa at Pasig na gagawin naman po nilang 8 to 5 din ang curfew nila.
This has been confirmed by Metro Manila Council Chair Edwin Olivares in a statement. He says the unified curfew takes effect today until August 31. The palace also clarifies the government is not yet allowing gyms, internet cafes, review and tutorial centers to reopen despite a more relaxed community quarantine status.
Yung mga negosyo nag-o-offer po ng personal care, aesthetic procedures and services, bukod po sa mga salons at barbershop, mga gyms, fitness studios, sports facilities, testing and tutorial centers, review centers, internet cafes, drive-in cinemas, pet grooming services ay mananatili pong sarado. Sarado po itong mga establishmentong ito sa ilalim po ng GCQ.
Religious gatherings are limited to 10 persons only. Although salons and restaurants are allowed to operate with a limited capacity, the local government units will determine the maximum capacity they permit. Rosalie Coz, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Motorcycle barriers are no longer required for a rider and a backrider who live in the same residence in areas under general community quarantine. Our police correspondent Leah Ilagan tells us why.
Joint Task Force Coronavirus Shield Commander, Police Lieutenant General Guillermo Eleazar confirmed in Get It Straight with Daniel Verzon today, the IATF has approved new rules for areas in general community quarantine. Motorcycle barriers are no longer required for a rider and a back rider who lived in the same residence when in GCQ.
Ngayon po ay binigyan ng kaluwagan, kumbaga pinakinggan, naintindihan at ngayon ay pinabigyan po itong konsepto na ito para po sa kapakanan ng karami.
The Motorcycle Federation of the Philippines lauds the decision.
Ang tagal na namin hinihiling yan eh. Basta ipatupad lang doon sa back ride, no? Yung helmet, full face or with shield. Lahat naman ng helmet, meron yung face shield eh. Tapos, kailangan yung naka long sleeve or jacket. Talking of back ride, then naka-guante siya, long pants. Mas maganda pang protection niya kumpara sa PPE. Basta pag uwi lang magkasama sa motor, yun lang damit nila, laban agad, huwag na ipasok sa loob ng bahay.
But Eleazar explained, the motorcycle barrier designed by Angkas remains a requirement for riders and back riders who do not live in the same house. Eleazar added, the motorcycle needs to be privately owned and not for hire. The back rider needs to be an authorized person outside of residence, but the rider can be either an APOR or non-APOR. Both the rider and the back rider need to use a face mask and a full face helmet. Eleazar warned that violators will face penalties.
Doon po sa walang barrier o walang helmet, yan po ay reckless driving. Yun po yung katapat na sanction na inilabas ng ating DOTR through LTO. At yan po ay merong multa yan, 1,500 to 2,000 sa first offense, 3,000 sa second offense at 5,000 to 10,000 dun sa mga subsequent na mga offenses.
Leia Ilagan, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Meanwhile, provincial bus operators are appealing to the government to allow them to operate partially. Joe Anano tells us why.
Although the National Capital Region's community quarantine has been downgraded to general community quarantine, provincial buses coming from Metro Manila are still not allowed to resume their trips. Provincial Bus Operators Association President Alex Yagi is complaining that majority of bus companies are suffering huge income loss. Some are even unable to pay terminal rent and other expenses. He adds that a lot of provincial bus operators are forced to lay off their employees who had not received any financial assistance from the government. The Provincial Bus Operators Association is calling on the government to allow them to operate even partially.
Napakaraming mga OFW at saka mga locally stranded na individuals na naihipit dito sa Metro Manila and kailangan nila makabiyahe pauwi sa kanilang mga probinsya. Pangalawa, kung kailangan natin na mabuksan natin ang ekonomiya natin, kailangan natin ng public transportation. Doon sa dalawang bagay na yon, kailangan talaga magbukas na tayo ng partial, gradual, provincial bus operations entering and going out of Metro Manila.
Yage also questions why the government allows the operations of point-to-point buses coming from Metro Manila entering Bulacan, Laguna, Cavite, and other nearby towns, while provincial buses are prohibited to do so. The Land Transportation, Franchising, and Regulatory Board, or LTFRB, explains it is yet to allow provincial buses originating from Metro Manila to operate because many provinces or local government units still prohibit the entry of people coming from the NCR as the threat of COVID-19 transmission continues.
Since we're talking about moving people, we also need to closely coordinate with the LGUs concerned. We already had a meeting with the umbrella organization of the locally elected officials kung saan nagsabi sila na a large majority of the provinces are still not willing to open up their borders. Back in August 4, 2 weeks ago, nagpalabas din ng resolution ang mga governors ng Region 3 na humihiling na ihinto muna yung provincial bus routes that are coming in from Metro Manila.
The LTFRB also clarifies that P2P buses being permitted to move in and out of Metro Manila are those that serve commuters who are coming from nearby towns and are working here in Metro Manila, so they need to travel daily. He further adds the operation of provincial buses in other regions where there is low risk of COVID-19 are permitted. Chairman Delgra also said that they are currently in talks with government officials in other regions on the designation of bus stops in case operations of provincial buses will resume. Joan Nano, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Today is day one of the GCQ in Metro Manila, and public transportation has been given a green light. But authorities remind both the PUB drivers and the passengers to wear what must be worn for their safety and protection against COVID-19. Let's find out why from Asher Kadapan Jr.
In Quezon City, Philippine National Police Highway Patrol Group or PNP-HPG personnel have apprehended at least 32 PUV drivers found to have violated protocols. They were caught with at least one passenger not wearing a face shield on board their vehicles.
Pag walang face shield ang isang pasahero, atin po silang pinapababa. Tapos yung driver ng bus ay atin po tinitikitan. Kino-confiscate po natin yung kanyang driver's license.
Bus personnel, on the other hand, have learned their lesson of requiring passengers to wear their face masks and full face shields prior to riding the vehicle.
Sumakay po siya sa sandigan, sabi niya may face shield siya. Tapos sabi ko pakisuot na lang po, nandito kami, dumiretso na kami. Hindi naman po pag-akit ng SPG. Kaya nakita na walang face shield, hindi pa ako naniningil. Pero sabi niya may face shield siya.
The operation of public transportation in Metro Manila resumes anew as general community quarantine is once again implemented. The IATF now allows the operation of mass rail transit, buses, jeepneys, taxis, TNVS, tricycles, and public shuttles. But all passengers, drivers, as well as conductors, if there is any, plying in any public utility vehicle should strictly follow the health protocols set by the Department of Transportation. The aim is to control the further spread of COVID-19 while allowing the economy to recover from the crisis. Among these are the strict implementation of physical distancing, particularly limited load for every type of public vehicle, mandatory wearing of face masks, and just recently, the wearing of full face shields. For passenger to avoid contracting COVID-19 and proceed with their essential travel, the HPG provided face masks to some passengers. At a jeepney terminal in Araneta Avenue, Quezon City, face shields are sold at 50 pesos each.
Kanina dalawang pasahero lang wala. Yung isang babae umuwi. Yung lalaki walang face shield, naglakad na lang. Hindi namin pinasasakay, nahabol pa nga namin pag walang face shield. Pinabababa namin. Pag wala silang face shield, pwede silang bumili rito, makakasakay sila kaysa uwi pa.
Authorities continue to appeal to public commuters to follow the guidelines when using public transportation for everyone's sake. Asher Kadapan Jr., UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people, we give glory to God.
Let's now take a closer look at the updated count of coronavirus cases around the world. The COVID-19 pandemic has now reached a total of more than 22.1 million confirmed cases in 188 countries, regions, and sovereignty. The region of the Americas still account for more than half that cumulative number. The fast-spreading disease has claimed over 781,000 lives, while more than 14.1 million patients across the globe have recovered from the new coronavirus infection, thanks be to God.
Meanwhile, the country's Department of Health says that 4,650 new cases were reported today based on tests done by 97 out of 105 laboratories. The National Capital Region logged the most new confirmed infections with more than 3,000. Now the total number of cases of coronavirus infection in the Philippines goes up to 173,774, while while more than 57,000 active cases are remaining. The DOH says there were 89 duplicates removed from the total case count. We have lost 111 more patients. But through our fervent prayers, medical interventions, and sacrifices of our medical frontliners, 716 more people have won their battle against the invisible enemy. That brings the total recoveries nationwide to 113,481. Thanks be to God.
The government continues to assure that any COVID-19 vaccine candidate that will enter the Philippines will undergo due process, including Russia's Sputnik V. Ray Pelayo tells us why.
The Department of Science and Technology estimates that by May or June of 2021, a COVID-19 vaccine may have its license secured from the country's Food and Drug Administration or FDA. It may be sold in the market for public consumption, but strict monitoring is needed.
Binabantayan natin for the next 2 to 3 years kung meron pa tayong makikita na yun nga, baka mga possible side effects na matagal na panahon bago lumabas, o kaya pag yun nga makikita sa mga pag milyon-milyon na yung ating mga nabakunahan.
Before a vaccine gets a license, it will be subjected to a phase 3 trial, including Russia's Sputnik V. The DOST says that around 10,000 volunteers are needed in the phase 3 trial, but participants from the Philippines will be less because many other countries have joined the trial. In the Philippines, trial will be conducted for 6 months in areas with high incidence of coronavirus infection. Volunteers will be duly compensated equivalent to the time they spent during the trial, including transportation and food allowance. But the DOST emphasizes that monetary compensation should not be the basis for volunteering, but the benefit of the vaccine.
Kasi baka yung mga tao ay sumasali hindi dahil naintindihan nila yung kung ano yung makukuha nila sa trial o voluntaryo nilang gagawin, kundi ginagawa nila dahil may bayad at malaki.
The trial process will be discussed to volunteers and what could happen to them. The DOST assures that experts will strictly monitor the health conditions of patients taking part in the clinical trial. Ray Pelayo, UNTV News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
The effects of the Modified Enhanced Community Quarantine or MECQ in Metro Manila in the past 2 weeks cannot yet be seen now. According to the Department of Health, the MECQ's effects will be felt in the weeks to come. The DOH clarifies the 2-week MECQ aimed to recalibrate the strategies of our medical frontliners.
We would require about 2 to 3 weeks for us to be able to analyze what has been the impact of these 2 weeks MECQ. Hindi naman natin sinabing in that 2 weeks time ay mapapababa natin ang kaso. That is really impossible. Ang hiningi natin na 2 linggo, hiningi ng ating mga healthcare workers is for them to breathe. And at the same time, the DOH was able, together with IATF, to recalibrate our strategies, to analyze more, to assess the situation at the ground.
Meanwhile, the Health Department explains the genome sequencing, which the Research Institute for Tropical Medicine, or RITM, started in March. Our health correspondent, Aiko Miguel, has the details why.
The Research Institute for Tropical Medicine, or RITM, began the genome sequencing of COVID-19 in the Philippines in the month of March. Genome sequencing is the study of researchers in laboratories to determine the origin of an existing viral disease. According to Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere, the primary reason why they did a gene sequencing is to know COVID-19's progression.
Since March, nung nag-uumpisa tayo ng pandemya, para makita natin, hindi para makita kung ano yung mga variants, pero makita nila kung ano talaga at maintindihan nila kung paano nagpo-progress ang sakit na ito.
Through genome sequencing, researchers also find out what strain of SARS-CoV-2 is existing in the Philippines. The DOH even confirmed the presence of the G614 variant of SARS-CoV-2 discovered in samples collected from a number of positive cases in Quezon City. This is a causative agent of COVID-19 as an agent of the COVID virus. But according to the DOH, there is no concrete evidence yet that this variant is more infectious.
So lahat ng samples na ito, nakita natin, we have mentioned this already, this was taken from Quezon City. So kailangan natin laging to be cautious when we try to interpret this kasi maliit na sample tapos isang lugar lang ang pinagkukuhanan natin.
The DOH also reiterates that pooled testing is only effective in areas with low prevalence of COVID-19. Local government units like Makati City may conduct pooled testing, but they should also consider to whom pooled testing can be used.
So usually we do this in low prevalence areas or low prevalence sectors. Kaya gagamitin natin ito initially dun sa mga sektor katulad ng mga vendors, katulad ng mga cashiers, katulad ng mga security guard. Merong initial study ang PSP, yung sa mga grocery, for example, low ang prevalence ng mga sector na ito, so maaari itong gamitin. So makakatulong ng malaki talaga ang pooled testing.
Through pooled testing, swab samples of pools of 5, 10, and 20 samples are placed in one RT-PCR test kit. If the result appears to be positive, then each individual will be assessed to make sure which individual is infected with SARS-CoV-2. If a negative result appears, the owners of the samples will no longer have to undergo COVID-19 testing. According to Undersecretary Vergere, they are still finalizing the evaluation on pool testing, which the RITM and the Philippine Society of Pathologists conducted to determine which setting pool testing can be applicable. Aiko Miguel, UNTV, News and Rescue. We serve the people. We give glory to God.
The Department of Health says that PhilHealth, or the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation, has paid its millions worth of balance with the Philippine National Red Cross. According to Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere, PhilHealth has sent its payment for its 700 million peso balance. The health official adds that the DOH continues to coordinate with the Philippine Red Cross to avoid a recurrence of the issue.
The MRT-3 management has designated train marshals inside trains to monitor the passengers' compliance with the health and safety protocols to fight the spread of COVID-19. When on board MRT trains, speaking remains prohibited. Even answering calls through any digital device is a big no-no. Passengers are not allowed to remove their face shields and face masks when inside the train. A 1 meter distance from other people must be maintained. These measures are in place to combat the virus.
Now here's a glimpse of what's the weather like in parts of the country. Brace yourselves for rain and ready your umbrellas if you will go outdoors because a low-pressure area or LPA will bring rains in various parts of the country. State Weather Bureau Pagasa says as of 3 p.m. today, the LPA was located at 255 kilometers east-northeast of Borongan City, Eastern Samar. This will bring cloudy skies with scattered rain showers and thunderstorms over eastern Visayas, Central Visayas, Bicol Region, Quezon Province, including Polillo Island, Aurora, and Isabela. Meanwhile, the southwest monsoon will cause cloudy skies with scattered rain showers and thunderstorms over Metro Manila, Mimaropa, rest of Calabarzon, rest of Central Luzon, Western Visayas, and Zamboanga Peninsula, while the rest of the country will experience partly cloudy to cloudy skies with isolated rain showers due to localized thunderstorms. Possible flash floods or landslides may occur during severe thunderstorms. No tropical cyclone advisory is issued. And our snappy news. Pasig City continues its modified number coding for tricycles as Metro Manila reverts to GCQ. Free rides for frontliners also continue, but only City Hall to Kenneth, City Hall to Ligaya via PCGH, and City Hall to Ligaya via Rosario routes. In Valenzuela City, Mayor Rex Gatchalian says the City Hall will return to its full workforce. The use of quarantine pass will still be observed. Curfew is from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. the following day, and drinking liquor is still a no-no. Senator Richard Gordon, the Philippine Red Cross chairman and CEO, says blood supply in hospitals now is low. He calls for interested blood donors to contact the PRC. Taguig City places a home address in Barangay Katuparan under localized quarantine from August 19 to September 2 after confirming a clustering of cases.
NCRPO Director Police Major General Debold Sinas has issued a statement to say he will undergo his annual medical checkup in Chinese Medical Hospital, Manila City from August 20 to 22. He said his admission in the hospital begins today. Now he is designating Police Brigadier General Nolasco Batan, a Deputy Regional Director for Administration, as the officer in charge of the National Capital Region Police Office from August 20 to 23, 2020, or upon his return. He vows to continuously monitor the NCRPO's activities and operations.
After almost 2 months since the incident, the 9 police members involved in the Jolo shooting incident last June 29 faced the Senate committee today. Senate Committee on Public Order Chair Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa first asked the National Bureau of Investigation or NBI and the involved police members on what really transpired that day and who pulled the trigger first. The NBI says, according to the witnesses, the SUV carrying the 4 soldiers, namely 9th Intelligence Unit Commanding Officer Major Marvin Indamog, Sergeant Eric Velasco, Corporal Abdal Asula, and Captain Erwin Managelod, was stopped by the cops at a checkpoint. Despite identifying themselves that they were Army troopers, they were asked by Police Senior Master Sergeant Abdeljimar Pajiri, the team leader of the cops, to proceed to the police station. But while on their way, the SUV stopped in front of a coffee shop within the vicinity of the police station. This prompted 4 of the cops to surround the SUV and pointed their long firearms against Major Indamog.
Si Major Indamog naman po at the time ay tinaas po ang kanyang 2 kamay at sabi po ng ating witnesses ay tinaas din po ang kanyang t-shirt of the impression na pinapakita na wala namang nakapak or anything na sa kanyang bewang na siguro po weapon.
But the police have a different version of the story.
Pagkabukas bigla po ng sakyan, atras po ko yun. Yun na, dala na yung baril niya. At nakaharap na yung 2 baka po sa likod. Yun, magkaputukan na. Sino una nagpaputok? Yun ang hindi ko na ma-identify yun kasi nagkaputukan na po eh. Hindi, ikaw na sa harapan, ikaw team leader. You must be responsible doon sa area of operation mo.
The NBI says the cops fired the first shots towards the back of the SUV.
Our witnesses were very consistent with their statement that the first shots were fired toward the interior of the Montero Sport, Your Honor. Precisely why Major Indamog turned to his left to check on what happened, but then he was also fired shots upon.
One of the 4 cops denied the allegation of planting of evidence.
So consistent ka na may dala talagang impor si Major Indamog?
Opo, Your Honor.
Na hindi talaga nyo pinlanted yun doon?
Hindi po, Your Honor.
Senator De La Rosa believes the policemen and the military in the area lacked real-time cooperation.
Kailangan pa natin i-improve ang coordination, lalong-lalo na doon sa ground level. Dahil kayo talaga dyan na magkakaroon ng misencounter pag hindi kayo mag-uusap.
Armed Forces of the Philippines Chief of Staff Gilbert Gabay hopes the filing of cases against the suspects will be fast-tracked to give justice to their fallen members. The AFP chief believes there was an intent to kill and cover up in the incident.
It was a deliberate act. There was an intent to kill, although we really cannot ascertain the motive. But definitely there's an intent to kill. Nakita niyo na yung tama, nasa likod lahat eh. Nung mabasa namin yung report, bakit ganito na nangyari? Parang may cover-up na self-defense, may angle na self-defense. We find the initial report as fabricated and full of inconsistencies and really misleading.
Last month, the NBI filed complaints for 4 counts of murder and planting of evidence against the 9 cops. However, the Bureau has yet to establish the involvement of illegal drugs in the incident. The Department of Agriculture implements a temporary ban on the importation of poultry products from Australia. Vincent Arboleda will join us tonight to tell us why live. Yes, Vincent?
Arlene, the Australian government has reported to the World Health Organization for Animal Health that an outbreak of H7N7 highly pathogenic avian influenza occurred at Lethbridge, Victoria in Australia last July 31. With the Australian Centre for Disease Preparedness confirming the incident, Agricultural Secretary William Dar released a memorandum order to temporarily ban the importation of poultry products from Australia. The ban includes products like poultry meat, day-old chick, eggs, and semen. Aside from Australia, the Agriculture Department has also implemented a temporary ban of poultry products coming from Brazil after a Chinese news source published that frozen chicken wings from Brazil tested positive for COVID-19. Now, meat processors fear the possible shortage of supply of mechanically deboned chicken or MDM. According to the Philippine Association of Meat Processors Incorporated or PAMPI, MDM is a key ingredient in making emulsified products like meatloaf, hot dogs, siomai, and others. The ban on all chicken products from Brazil is a big hit to PAMPI, as Brazil is the second biggest supplier of imported chicken products to the country. If the government cannot solve the issue immediately, companies of canned goods with only 2 weeks inventory will be most affected.
The travel time from the Philippines to Brazil or from Brazil to the Philippines is 5 to 6 weeks, 8 weeks if you go to Cebu. You will realize, Vince, that in a matter of time, 6 weeks from now, 7 weeks from now, you will see some brands being not available in the market anymore.
PAMPI says the ban has also increased the price of MDM coming from Europe with an increase of 20 to 25%. Director Ronnie Domingo of the Bureau of Animal Industry relieves the fear of meat processors on the effect of the ban to the supply of imported chicken in the country.
Marami po tayong bansa na kinukuhanan po ng manok, 14 na bansa po yan. Hindi natin sinarado po yun. At ikalawa, sobra po ang manok natin this year.
Domingo adds that there are also a 150-day surplus of supply of chicken locally. Despite this, the department will also study the documents to be submitted by the Brazilian government. Arlene?
Vincent, moving forward, are there any proposals from the private sector on how to deal with imported meat products infected with diseases?
Yes, Arlene, the Samahang Industriya ng Agrikultura or SINAG is urging the government to fast-track the establishment of the first border facility. The first border facility will be able to screen all imported meat and agriculture products to make sure that it is safe for consumption and does not carry any diseases. Arlene?
In relation to that, Vincent, President Duterte has already given a budget to the DA for the establishment of this first border facility. Any progress on that side of the DA, Vincent?
Yes, Harleen, according to Director Domingo of the BAI, the Agriculture Department is now working on the necessary documents for the establishment of the first border facility in Manila. The department currently has ₱500 million of fund for this project. The government also plans to establish 4 more first border facilities in Batangas, Subic, Cebu, and Davao. Back to you, Hardy.
Thank you so much, Vincent Arboleda, for that report.
Despite being hopeful for a positive result for the vaccine being tested by the British pharmaceutical company, Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison has confirmed the potential COVID-19 vaccine has to clear the trials first before it gets into the system. The federal government has set up an expert panel to identify other vaccine projects to ensure there are other possibilities available. Morrison advised the government is continuing talks with other parties and backing Australian researchers as well. However, the Oxford University vaccine is one of the most advanced and promising in the world, and the deal secures early access for every Australian. If the British-designed coronavirus vaccine proves to be safe and effective, Australia will manufacture and supply the vaccine and provide it free to 25 million Australians. South Korea reports another 297 new cases of coronavirus infection, the highest daily figure since March. Museums, nightclubs, and karaoke bars within around Seoul, Korea's capital, Seoul, are ordered to be closed. Today, South Korea met a 3-digit increase in cases for a 6th day after weeks with numbers generally around the 40s. Of the nearly 300 cases reported, 252 were in the Greater Seoul area. Many of the new cases have been linked to the Sarangjeel Church, whose pastor has been a vocal critic of South Korean President Moon Jae-in. In total, 623 members of Sarangjeel Church have been infected so far, according to the Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or KCDC. Let us now take a closer look at the updated count of coronavirus cases in countries worst hit by the pandemic. Cases in the USA has surpassed 5.4 million, but with close to 1.9 million recoveries. Although Brazil has more patients recovered, now at more than 2.75 million out of its 3.4 million total count. India nears 2.8 million total cases after reporting 64,000 additional positives. Russia has kept its total case below 100,000 to date, while South Africa became the 5th country to reach more than 500,000 cases. Peru and Mexico have also surpassed the 500,000 mark, with Colombia close to that. The head of the U.S. Postal Service said in a statement on Tuesday he would pause operational changes at the agency until after November election. That is after lawmakers expressed fear the changes would hinder the collection of mail-in ballots. But Postmaster General Luis DeJoy maintains that the Postal Service is ready today to handle whatever volume of election mail it receives this fall. He also said he had been making changes at the agency to ensure its long-term sustainability. But to avoid even the appearance of any impacts on election mail, he is suspending these initiatives until after the election is concluded. The measures, which include eliminating overtime for mail carriers, reducing post office hours, and removing postal boxes, have been faulted for slowing mail delivery and criticized as an attempt to disenfranchise voters seeking to vote safely during the coronavirus pandemic. U.S. President Donald Trump has said elections by mail pose a fraud risk, arguing that ballots would take too long to process. The CEO of Tesla and SpaceX has become the world's 4th richest person according to Bloomberg Billionaires Index. Only Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg, Microsoft's Bill Gates, and Amazon's Jeff Bezos are wealthier than him. Musk's net worth rose to $84.8 billion on the Bloomberg Billionaires Index, which is a daily ranking of the world's richest people. And more snappy news. Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro's popularity increased in August, reaching 37% from 30% in July, according to a survey released on Monday. Nightclubs, karaoke bars, and buffet restaurants must cease operations in Seoul, Incheon, and the neighboring Gyeonggi province, South Korea. Former Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort had deep ties to a Russian intelligence officer and secretly shared campaign information, according to a sweeping Senate Intelligence Committee report released on Tuesday. The United Kingdom's inflation rate rose to 1% in July as lockdown measures eased further.
Now let's marvel at the wonderful creations. According to National Aeronautics and Space Administration, or NASA, astronomers report in a new study the discovery of 95 objects known as brown dwarfs, many within a few dozen light years of the Sun. These celestial bodies are well outside the solar system, but astronomers consider the region they are inhabiting our cosmic neighborhood. Scientists say we've never met some of the Sun's closest neighbors until now. This collection represents some of the coldest known examples of these objects, which are between the sizes of planets and stars. Brown dwarfs lie somewhere between the most massive planets and the smallest stars. They are expected to cool as they age, passing from near stellar temperatures down to planetary temperatures and below, fading all the while and eventually winking out. This major advancement was made possible with archival data from the Nicholas U. Mayall 4-meter telescope at Kitt Peak National Observatory in Arizona, USA. The Victor M. Blanco 4-meter telescope at Cerro Tololo Inter-American Conservatory in Chile, and the Backyard World's Volunteers, among others. Here is an artist's impression of a brown dwarf orbiting a white dwarf. And those are the reasons behind the news, August 19, 2020. I am Herlene Delgado.
Reasons we deliver to you as they unfold. I am Mariela Toza.
I'm Angelo Castro III, because we need to know. You will always ask why.
And I am William Theo. We serve the people. We give glory to God.